everybody, I'm back. Finally completed Black Myth Wukong. It only took like uh 33 videos, but I finally got around to completing it, which all the complete walkthrough is up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Link is in the description below, along with my Patreon, uh, TikTok, Twitch links in the description as well if you want to follow me in my various channels and further support the content. So now that I completed the game fully, and they already put in the nominations for the Game Awards show that's coming out in December 12th next month, which is already getting a little bit of controversy in of itself, given how how much of a joke most of the whole nominees for the people to vote online, which is pretty much like, well, it's been a gimmick for a long time. It doesn't really mean much. Don't know if it was the entirety when the Game Awards show first started many years ago, or it became very corporate, in the past handful of years. I don't know, but always had fun as a kid going up online and submitting my idea which category should vote on which category should win best fighting game or best soundtrack, blah blah blah. But now it's like, I think people probably understood how much of a joke that is, a lot longer than me. But it wasn't until maybe in the past couple of years when I realized, man, this is like not as fun, and the people ain't really are involved with the whole voting thing. It's just something. I mean, obviously they won't do this, but it's probably, I would respect it more if they put it, the Game Awards website, when they post it up every year where people can vote in and everything like that. They should just like, this is all for fun, but they got their own kind of, like any other award show, they got their own little committee that decides who gets what award. The people, if it really was down to the people, there are certain things that wouldn't win certain categories if it was the case. So I say all that to say that Black Myth Wukong is in many nominations, including Game of the Year, which I argue this and Final Fantasy Remake should be like the only two contenders, because out of all the games that came out this year, at least, the ones that I play at the very least, those two are like the biggest ones that really deserves, like, okay, these should be recognized because they're so good. They're very, very good. So I'm gonna break down a bit of story, the gameplay, soundtrack, graphics, as much as I can through my breakdown of my experience playing Wukong. Now, the story, as I initially thought, I think a lot of people initially thought, was going to be a reminiscent, or at least an adaptation of the story of Journey to the West, where the Monkey King travels with Pigsy and Tripitaka on this journey and meeting these various characters and all this other stuff along the learn all this stuff along the way and on this pilgrimage. But no, we get sort of Pigsy, but there's no Tripitaka. There's some mention of the monk, but we don't get no physical appearance of the character. Now, I don't know if there's going to potentially be a sequel. They left that pretty open ended. If there aren't any expectations for a sequel, I'm not too mad at it. This is like a good, solid game. Told enough of this story on its own, very self-contained. But, the game developers, they ain't gonna just leave money on the table if there's like, because they made bank on this game. So of course there's gonna potentially be a sequel. I imagine maybe 4 or 5 years from now, there will be like a teaser trailer for a sequel to this game, right? I'm pretty sure there'll be perfect timing at the very least for a PS6 game, just in time for a PS6 to come around, or at the very latest, halfway through the time when the PS6 is already in many people's homes. But basically they did, well, the way the game starts off at, we see, they call it the Destined One, but pretty much the Monkey King battling. Well, they did a great job really showcasing a lot of these Chinese deities. Not everyone, but a good amount of them. There was 40 some odd characters from Journey to the West that's adapted into this game, and even like some of the some minor characters that was part of the Journey to the West story, or even just adapted from Chinese mythology, period. And it did an impressive job. You can tell that some people who was working on this had to have worked with Cinematica on the God of War games, because the scale on a lot of these fights is impressive. A lot of the game mechanics, I'm pretty sure it's intuitive for people who play like a Dark Souls type of game before, but it took me, like, full disclosure, if you watch my walkthrough, I didn't really like get used to the game mechanics until I'm well into chapter 2, because it was like, getting towards the end of chapter 1, getting into chapter 2, that's when I was like really getting used to how to utilize certain of the game mechanics. It was it's it's definitely like not a challenge, but something I had to get used to. As well as it's so much you can do with this character in terms of utilizing powers. It gets kind of daunting at first until you sit with it for a minute. But I like the way they incorporate the various powers you have, because when you saw the trailers, you wonder, okay, how am I going to do all that? Because it's like this dude doing a lot of stuff. But they broke it down pretty well. With the transformations and all these different spells that you use, multiplying yourself, which is my favorite one, because just, if you know Journey to the West, that story inspired many of anime, especially Dragon Ball. But every time I see like him multiplying himself, I can't help but think of Naruto, because he's kind of like a some Wukong-ish type. With the whole cloning jutsu thing. But as the story starts off at, we see like the Destined One, or the Monkey King, I'm pretty sure, coming off of the Journey to the West story and challenging these other Chinese deities. And it's like very God of War-ish, because it's like, as you carry on and fighting all these creatures, it's like, I can't help but think of like, okay, just like with Kratos with Greece killing like Poseidon and Hermes and all those people and causing catastrophes because they ain't there to control it anymore. Like, what damage is the Monkey King doing by killing various of these deities? It's like you can't help but think about that, because that would cause some level of catastrophe. And as a matter of fact, you don't even get to see any human beings along the way on this adventure, which is maybe this like a different plane of existence, separate or tangentially separate from any human interactions, because you get cool cinematics after each chapter, which, by the way, I can't help but think about Star Wars Visions with this different type of art style that looks so good. But I forgot where I was going with this. But it's basically like those little cinematics is the only time you probably see some humans, within this world. You don't get to see any of them along the journey. Maybe if they do a sequel, they'll actually start to introduce some people, or more specifically, Tripitaka, the monk that the Monkey King is supposed to be assisting. And along with Pigsy, there was supposed to be another character that helps along with the journey. I forgot, because I thought it was a reptilian humanoid creature. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I read that story. But anyway, we see the Monkey King battling this the biggest, not the biggest, but like the strongest deity there, Erlang Shen. And it shows you how to test the how the game mechanics work, and the tutorials basically. But the Monkey King loses, and just like in the story, he ends up in like a stone, and many years pass. He cracks some older monkey cracks open, and you get, which I always assumed was like a duplicate that the Monkey King split off in order to carry on in gathering his powers and reforming to eventually fight back. Because the Monkey King is kind of like a trickster deity in a way. Is not that dissimilar to something like Loki from Norse mythology. So you're playing this essentially a copy, in a way. That along with the journey, you acquire all these different. I was gonna call it seals. I can't think of what they're specifically called, but there's these particular seals or ornaments that is really tied into. It's kind of like broken pieces of what the Monkey King utilizes or something. And you travel along, and you're fighting all these creatures. You meet I was gonna call him Pigsy. I think he's called Baji. I was gonna call him Pigsy. And he's pretty much just like a grumpy type of it kind of reminds me of Phil, the trainer Phil from the Hercules animated film. He's kind of got that vibe. It was kind of grumpy, kind of helper in a way, who had like a fling with the Queen of Spiders or something. That's kind of weird. I didn't like that level. As I mentioned, as I went through that level, it's the most, really made me uneasy, and I was trying to rush to it. Never wanted to go back there as best I could. if I could help it, I never really wanted to go back unless I absolutely had to. But in any case, uh, uh, you're going through all these, trials, with certain people that help you along the way, like this wolf creature in the cellar who helps you with boosting up your stats a bit. He was probably easily the most useful one out of everybody in that entire game. Of course, there is also that Zen Tiger, which that was a beast of a fight dealing with him in order to get his spirit transformation, which him and that Red Tide transformation honestly were the two most useful ones that bailed me out of so many jams as I deal with certain bosses. Especially Red Ties, that the burning damage that you inflict. God, that helps. It was so helpful in so many fights. But yeah, it's just the journey is just pretty much the destined one, acquiring all his gifts that were scattered essentially, and in the end, bringing it all together after defeating all these different demonic forces or certain deities, like this yellow brow Buddha who traps you in this sack, which is kind of creepy. The way the design was super creepy and surreal, but it was so much fun. But the story you pretty much follow pretty well. It's very simplistic. We just just going through each of these kingdoms, where it's like the forest or the volcano, fiery place, the webbed hollow where home to all these like spider creatures or bug creatures, the desert and it's various places, and it's open world but not crazy where you get too lost. But if you explore, you end up fighting other creatures that you can probably utilize. If you defeat them, you end up gaining something, either a new spirit to transform into or a particular material to craft your outfits. Now, one of the problems I have is that if you have to backtrack because you overlook something that you saw somebody else do, so you go back to try to get that thing. There is a couple of instances like this Scorpion Lord, because I didn't go to him first, and I went to, because you go through like there's like a two paths you gotta deal with in order to deal with the centipede creature. Well, you don't really need to do. It's just beneficial if you deal with the Scorpion Lord to add something to your arsenal, but it's not like a prerequisite. However, because I chose one path first and then wanted to go to the Scorpion Lord afterwards, if you do that, then the Scorpion Lord is not there and you won't be able to do anything with that. And that's one of the things that I thought sucked, because you should still have that option. And a lot of people, because this is trying to force people to do like a second playthrough, and I argue you shouldn't be forcing your players to have to go through a second playthrough in order to get to a certain task because they went through the wrong order or whatever. They should still be there, I should still be able to fight the Scorpion Lord even if I didn't choose him first, he should still be an option. I don't care for that because it's kind of, like, what if I want to take him on at a later period or come back around? Like, you should leave that option open. That's one of my main critiques. One of my main critiques of this game. Oh, and the second one being, you should, like with the God of War Ragnarok, if you're dealing with a crazy difficult character like that, mouse rat ferret looking creature holding that head in the desert, that was so incredibly dumb to deal with, because I had to really grind in order to boost up your character a little bit further in order to get to a certain point where he's not much of a threat anymore. And I find that quite annoying, because you should have because after a certain period, because I know, this game wasn't made in America. Usually Japanese or Chinese game creators don't hold your hand in certain games, but you're making certain characters on a certain degree more challenging than it needs to be, where it kind of forces the player to actually have to waste probably days or hours bare minimum to grind and fight little characters in order to build up your experience meter, so you can apply more points to certain of your skill trees in order to be able to get through to a certain boss, like the one with the electric, like that creature with the electric hammers in that desert area. That was another one, whereas I had to utilize certain moves that not until halfway through the game I started to utilize a little bit more than I initially did, like standing up on my staff in order to avoid the electric shockwaves on the ground. But but I ain't too mad on that, because certain characters you have to probably utilize certain other moves. I didn't really use that much of a thrust capabilities outside of just one shot hard thrust. But yeah, I mean, the certain of the moves gets a little complicated in certain aspects. Sometimes you end up doing it. There's a few times I end up doing certain moves completely by accident, but it still helped a bit. But I can't, depending on the practice, I can't actually manually do it just by muscle memory, if you catch my drift. So they could have easily, I was about to say they could have simplified the, different movements a bit, so we can pull off certain fighting styles, because you get 3 fighting stances, 2 of the which you can or at least they can just be simplified to a certain degree for certain players, just like with fighting games like Street Fighter, for example. There are certain settings where you can simplify certain moves so people can actually be able to pull off certain supers a little bit easier without it being crazy complicated. Not saying this was complicated to a degree, but it's still, though, is you're already dealing with complicated bosses. Either you can simplify certain moves, or you can, after 3 failed attempts, you can have the game ask the player, do you want to lower the difficulty? So that way certain people can just get by a certain character so they can move on into the story. That will be helpful, in my opinion. And the dodge mechanic, the timing on that, I'm pretty sure other people are better at it than me, but this is a kind of like a Souls mechanic, in all honesty. But I think this kind of perfected it, where you gotta utilize your dodge moves more so, because this isn't the type of game where you can just block. And I argue you should add a blocking mechanic, unless you're dealing with a certain stance. You should allow a stance where it can give you the option to block. It give you like a kind of like a, I don't know, while you blocking, it kind of lowers your stamina meter a bit, so that way it isn't too OP. So, because some people, or at the very least, make it easier to dodge, because the dodge timing is, I don't know, unless you figure it out. But it's just, I don't know, you just, for me at least, I can get the dodge mechanic. It took a while, but you can't help but mash the thing in order to get off a lucky dodge. It isn't like you press it, but you dodge too early or you dodge too late, because the hit window is like, I don't know, it's just kind of small. You still end up getting hit sometimes, even though full well you dodge you press the dodge button. But anyway, the graphics. I want to talk about the graphics a little bit. The graphics of this game is impeccable. I have no issue with the graphics, especially when you're dealing with like a scale of these monsters. They utilize this game engine perfectly, where you're seeing the scale of these gargantuan creatures. It's incredible. Even towards the end, when you're fighting the 4 heavenly kings, it's like a freaking kaiju battle. It's impressive, very impressive. You can tell, it's one of those games where it took a long time before this game came out, but you can see the work they put into it in that time, where they wasn't half-assing it. It wasn't something like Gotham Knights or whatever like that. No, they actually put in the effort in this game. The musical soundtrack is like, not music I heard of. I'm pretty sure they actually got some Chinese orchestra to really fill in like the vibe of this adventure. It's not, some, add in some gimmicky pop song or anything like that. No, they actually got, an orchestra utilizing Chinese instruments to really bring in the vibe of the game and the world that you're in. Now, there's certain characters I really wish they kind of flesh out more, or you think they'll come along your journey or do something, because if they haven't died off, you can definitely see them a little bit more. Like that bear demon that you fight at the end of chapter 1, you don't see him again, and it'll be interesting to see him come along, or at least show up again at some point in the journey. Same way with that Ping Ping Fox. She seemed like very interesting, and you see her show up a little bit, and she has not popped up since then. And it's a shame that we was like, okay, what are you gonna do with that? Is you kind of left that hanging. What happened to her? And the people that wasn't killed off, that serpent creature that you fought, that serpent humanoid person in chapter 1 in that water, that was probably my first headache of a boss fight that I experienced. After you fought him, before you got to the bear demon or bear deity or whatever, he wasn't killed. He slithered away. He seems, like an honorable character, and you thought like, okay, he's gonna help along the journey or show up again later on in the journey, offer some wisdom or something. But they just come in, do their part, which is fine, but you never hear from them again. That's kind of sucks because there's a lot of interesting people here. Oh, speaking of people, the people that casted for this done an impeccable job, and they actually got some very attractive people in certain of these roles, especially the women involved, because there's many people who complain, and I agree, about the lack of acknowledging or at least getting some good looking people involved in these games instead of these or either again more than likely uglifying beautiful actors and actresses, that especially the actresses, where it did not need to be. Like you see something like the actress who plays Mary Jane in the PS4 Spider-Man film, at least in the sequel, they kind of like changed her appearance from the first game, where she looked very beautiful, but then kind of like, I don't know, tweak something. You can just tell in the face, like they kind of, did something with her cheeks or something, where it's kind of like a little slightly bulbousy. Where this is just embracing, yeah, we got beautiful women playing these deities or demigods, and it's just like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. Just like, and that's the difference between the Western game developers and what's going on in over the East, where they're not, at least for the most part, not kowtowing to this PC crap, where it's like, we don't want to objectify, people. Like, shut up. People want to see hot people in their media sometimes, okay? And they're just stunning characters, especially Ping Ping. This is probably like my favorite one. And I'm pretty sure a lot of women love the look of Erlang Shen. I'm pretty sure there's like at least a couple of people that, like, I heard, just going goo goo gaga over this dude. And yeah, he's a handsome dude, but girls are loving that character. Just people like eye candy. You need to stop like shaming them for it, or and using the tactic of objectification as a shield in order to, whatever. It's kind of like, no. We want to see hot people in our in media sometimes, and it's something that get us really invested in the story. It is what it is. No one wants slubby looking people as like characters in a game. It's whatever. What else? Yeah, I was talk about the soundtrack. The soundtrack is pretty on point. Yeah, I mean, like the story, like I said, is pretty simple. It isn't something like God of War Ragnarok. I keep comparing it to that because it's kind of like, in the same vein. So I can't help but compare, even though they're telling two very different stories. But it's just, I don't know. There's more meat to the bone with God of War Ragnarok when it comes to his story, involving with Atreus and like dealing with Odin, all this other stuff. There's so much involved with different characters with different motivations and stuff like that, where this is a little bit more simple. But simple doesn't always mean terrible. It's still fine with what it gave us. It's just you're going on this journey and you're acquiring your reacquiring your skills to become like the great sage monkey again, and getting back at the people who kind of took you down at the beginning of the game. But hey, along this way, you through journals, you learn a little bit about certain creatures, demigods, and deities of the Chinese pantheon, which is pretty cool. So yeah, a lot of people have done their homework, and don't think they actually utilize every Chinese deity, uh, but they definitely use a very large amount of them. I'm shocked at the amount of characters involved where it doesn't feel crazy bloated. It seems like everybody had a time to shine. It's very well balanced. So I applaud them for this. This is a crazy, balanced game despite so many characters involved. Uh, uh, so yeah. What else? Not much else to say. I covered like the graphics, the soundtrack, gameplay, uh, and the story. But if I give this like a grade, I give this like a good um, basic A. I can't give really like a good A plus or S tier of a game because of the situations with certain of the bosses seems like kind of like grueling trying to get through, and certain of the controls like the dodge mechanic could have been modified just a little bit because it seems like not always intuitive as you input in the button, and it won't like the timing isn't always right, and you still end up getting hit most of the time. But yeah, besides all that stuff, it's pretty solid of a game. Very well done. I think it's probably the last anticipated game that I was expecting for this year. No, there's Marvel Rivals coming out, but that's kind of like an Overwatch type of situation with Marvel characters. So that would be like the last game I'm planning on getting before the year is out. There's not much games that I'm anticipating for next year. It's probably just a few. But yeah, this year is pretty good with some solid games that came out this year, especially Marvel vs. Capcom 3 or not 3, the collection. That one's definitely gonna get best fighting game of the year. That's obviously no doubt. I will be streaming live the Game Awards show. Probably have to mute certain things when they do like the orchestra or live musical artists or whatever. But hopefully we'll get something this year because we still haven't heard anything from the Wolverine game, especially after the whole controversy with somebody leaking the information about the game and certain early like not finished or polished gameplay of the Wolverine game and got in trouble for that, legal trouble for that. So we haven't heard anything since then about that game. Also, the Wonder Woman game, don't know where the hell that is. And they announced it like at least 3 years ago. We should have like at least heard something last year about it. But it must be huge, a lot inside the game that we can expect if it's still not talked about after this long. So those two are like the primary big things I'm anticipating is going to be shown at the Game Awards show. But anyway, we'll see. Cross my fingers on that one. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Black Myth Wukong. This, like I said, very good game. Despite, certain, little criticism I had of it, overall, still didn't ruin the experience for me. Very solid game. Very well done. There's a little bit, I assumed it was the Chinese zodiacs because you get this little secret area where you get to upgrade your armor with the Zen Tiger. I thought at the area you see that dragon and the tiger, the monkey and the dog. I thought, this is a secret area where you meet all the other Chinese zodiacs in like a humanoid form. But no, but that would have been cool because That's part of Chinese mythology, the origin story of the Chinese zodiacs. And it's like that would have been cool to throw that in there. They didn't, that's at least maybe I'm assuming that, but it's just you can't help but think about that, at least for me, because my introduction to the Chinese zodiac mostly comes from Jackie Chan adventures with the talismans. And it would have been dope if the game actually took the time, because you can't help but wonder if they should have thought about that. You already got like the dragon, the monkey, the dog, and the tiger. Like, where's the horse, the rabbit, the snake, sheep, the pig? That's like, come on, that's like, it would have been dope to see all that stuff. But anyway, those are my overall thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of Black Myth Wukong. How did you enjoy it? And how would you rate it? Like, if you give it like a letter grade. And what's your pros and cons of it all? I will see you guys in a little bit, because I'll be covering season 2 of My Hero Academia on the channel. So stay tuned for that. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.